I'm Dr. William Lee, a Harvard-trained physician, researcher, and author of Eat to Beat Disease. For 3 decades, I've been studying the extraordinary ways your body defends itself against disease. And what I'm about to share with you today represents one of the most exciting areas of modern medical research, a field that is completely transforming our understanding of how food can protect you from cancer. Here's what fascinates me. Deep inside your gut, you have a community of 39 trillion bacteria, more bacterial cells than your own body contains. And these microscopic organisms are having a conversation with your immune system every single day. That conversation determines whether your body is prepared to fight cancer or whether it's laying the groundwork for disease to take hold. The science on this is exploding right now. A landmark study published in Nature Medicine in 2024 followed over 47,000 participants and found that individuals with a diverse, healthy gut microbiome had a 30% lower incidence of multiple cancer types, including colorectal, breast, and lung cancers, and this wasn't a small correlation. The statistical significance was overwhelming. The researchers concluded that the gut microbiome should be considered a major modifiable risk factor in cancer prevention. That's a powerful statement from one of the world's most prestigious medical journals. Yet most doctors, most oncologists, most gastroenterologists are not having this conversation with their patients. That's what we're going to change in the next 25 minutes. To understand this, you need to appreciate something remarkable about how your body works. Every single day, your body regenerates approximately 60 billion new cells. That's 60 billion opportunities every 24 hours for your biology to either strengthen its defenses or weaken them. And the raw material for all of that cellular regeneration comes from one source, the food you eat. This is why what you put on your plate matters so profoundly. But here's what most people don't realize. You are not just eating for yourself. You are also eating for the 39 trillion microorganisms that live in your gut. These bacteria are not passive passengers. They are active participants in your health. They digest your food, they produce metabolites, they regulate your immune system, and they send chemical signals throughout your body that influence whether cells grow normally or begin to behave abnormally. According to the World Health Organization, 30 to 50% of all cancers are preventable through diet and lifestyle modifications. 30 to 50%. That is an extraordinary number. It means that roughly 1 in every 3 cancers could be prevented if people understood which foods support the body's natural defenses and which ones undermine them. And the research on the gut microbiome is at the absolute forefront of this understanding. Let me share with you what the latest peer-reviewed research is showing. In 2023, a team at Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health published a study in JAMA Oncology that followed over 110,000 participants for 26 years. What they found was striking. People in the highest quintile of dietary fiber intake had a 22% lower risk of colorectal cancer compared to those in the lowest quintile. That is not a small number. And the mechanism behind this finding is what makes it so fascinating. When you eat fiber-rich foods, your gut bacteria ferment that fiber and produce compounds called short-chain fatty acids, or SCFAs. The most important of these is called butyrate. Butyrate is now recognized by researchers around the world as one of the most critical molecules for maintaining a healthy gut and protecting against cancer development. A 2022 study published in Gut, which is one of the world's leading gastroenterology journals, demonstrated that butyrate directly suppresses tumor growth in colorectal cancer models by reducing inflammation, inducing programmed cell death in cancer cells, and strengthening the gut lining itself. But this is just the beginning. The relationship between your microbiome and cancer is multidimensional and extraordinarily complex. Researchers have now identified at least 4 major pathways through which the gut microbiome influences cancer risk. The first is through short-chain fatty acid production, which I just described. The second is through the regulation of gut permeability. When your microbiome is healthy, your intestinal lining stays intact and selective. But when dysbiosis sets in, meaning an imbalance in the composition of your gut bacteria, the tight junctions between your intestinal cells begin to weaken. This allows substances that should stay in your gut to leak into your bloodstream. This condition is commonly called leaky gut, and in scientific terms, it involves a protein called zonulin that regulates intestinal permeability. Elevated zonulin levels have been observed in patients with virtually every type of cancer, and research published in Cell in 2021 showed that this increased intestinal permeability triggers a cascade of chronic inflammation that actively promotes tumor development and progression. The third pathway is through what researchers call microbial metabolites. Your gut bacteria don't just produce short-chain fatty acids, they produce hundreds of different bioactive compounds. And many of these compounds travel through your bloodstream to every organ in your body, including your tissues and your organs, where they influence whether cells remain healthy or become diseased. One of the most important of these metabolite categories is the secondary bile acids. Certain gut bacteria convert primary bile acids into secondary bile acids, and some of these secondary bile acids have been shown to promote cancer, while others appear to suppress it. This is why the specific composition of your microbiome matters so profoundly. A microbiome rich in beneficial bacteria like Lactobacillus reuteri and certain strains of Faecalibacterium prausnitzii tends to produce metabolites that protect against cancer. A microbiome dominated by harmful bacteria tends to produce metabolites that promote inflammation and tumor growth. The fourth pathway is through the gut immune axis. Approximately 70 to 80% of your immune system resides in your gut. This is not a coincidence. Your gut is where your immune cells are constantly sampling the bacterial environment, learning to distinguish between friend and foe, and making decisions about whether to mount an inflammatory response or remain calm. When your microbiome is healthy and diverse, this communication system works beautifully. When it becomes dysbiotic, this communication breaks down. And what happens is that regulatory T cells, which are supposed to suppress inappropriate immune responses and prevent chronic inflammation, become less effective. This chronic, low-grade inflammation creates an environment inside your body that is fertile ground for cancer to develop. Here's what I find most compelling about this research. Researchers at the University of Chicago demonstrated in a landmark 2018 study published in Science that altering the gut microbiome could directly influence whether tumors responded to immunotherapy treatment. They found that by simply changing the composition of gut bacteria, they could switch tumors from immunotherapy resistant to immunotherapy sensitive. Think about what that means. The same tumor in the same patient responded to treatment when the gut microbiome was healthy and did not respond when the microbiome was disrupted. This finding has since been replicated by multiple research groups around the world. The mechanism behind this is related to the metabolites that I mentioned a moment ago. When beneficial gut bacteria produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, these compounds travel through the bloodstream and reach tumor sites, where they directly enhance the activity of T cells and natural killer cells, the very immune cells that your body uses to recognize and destroy cancer cells. This is why researchers at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center and MD Anderson Cancer Center have begun recommending fermented foods as part of comprehensive cancer prevention strategies. The evidence base is simply too strong to ignore. Now, I want to take you one layer deeper into the biology, because understanding how this works at the cellular level is what makes this knowledge so actionable. When you eat a diet rich in diverse plant foods and fermented foods, certain bacteria in your gut, particularly species like Akkermansia, Mucinifila, Faecalibacterium prausnitzii, and various Lactobacillus species, begin to flourish. These beneficial bacteria produce metabolites that do several extraordinary things inside your body. First, they strengthen your gut barrier by increasing the production of tight junction proteins. These are the proteins that seal the gaps between your intestinal cells, preventing leaky gut and reducing the passage of inflammatory toxins into your bloodstream. A 2023 study published in Nature Microbiology showed that individuals with higher levels of Akkermansia mucinifila had significantly better gut barrier integrity and lower levels of systemic inflammation. Second, these metabolites directly modulate your immune system. Butyrate, for example, acts as a histone deacetylase inhibitor at the cellular level, which sounds complicated, but what it means is that it influences gene expression in your immune cells, making them more effective at their job of surveilling and eliminating abnormal cells before they become cancers. This is a mechanism that was detailed in a 2021 review published in Trends in Molecular Medicine, and it represents one of the most exciting frontiers in cancer prevention research. Third, these beneficial metabolites help regulate angiogenesis in and around tumor tissues. Now, angiogenesis is the process by which tumors recruit their own blood supply. Without a blood supply, tumors cannot grow beyond a couple of millimeters in size. They simply cannot get enough nutrients and oxygen to survive. But when tumors are able to stimulate the growth of new blood vessels toward them, they can grow and spread. And here is what is remarkable. Certain gut bacteria metabolites can interfere with this angiogenesis signaling, essentially starving tumors of the blood supply they need to grow. Research from the Angiogenesis Foundation, where I have spent the last 30 years of my career, has shown that specific food-derived compounds can influence this process in meaningful ways. Now here's where the research gets even more interesting. The standard Western diet, characterized by high consumption of ultra-processed foods, added sugars, refined carbohydrates, and processed meats, is now known to be one of the most destructive forces for the gut microbiome. A study published in Nature in 2022 followed over 900 healthy adults and found that those with the lowest diet quality scores had significantly reduced microbiome diversity, lower levels of beneficial bacteria, and higher levels of markers of systemic inflammation. The foods that are most damaging to the microbiome are the ones that have become staples of the modern diet. Emulsifiers, which are added to most processed foods to improve texture and shelf life, have been shown in research published in Cancer Discovery to disrupt the gut mucus layer, reduce beneficial bacterial populations like Akkermansia, and promote low-grade inflammation that directly promotes cancer development. And here's the surprising part. The food industry has, in effect, engineered foods that are perfectly optimized to damage the gut microbiome and drive chronic inflammation. This is not a conspiracy theory, it is documented in the scientific literature. Ultra-processed foods are designed to be hyperpalatable, which means they override the natural satiety signals that your body uses to regulate appetite. People eat more of them, they gain weight, and the microbiome becomes progressively dysbiotic. This is why obesity is now understood to be intimately connected to microbiome health and cancer risk. Adipose tissue, particularly the visceral fat that accumulates around your organs, is not just inert storage tissue, it is metabolically active, it produces inflammatory cytokines, hormones, and growth factors that create an environment that promotes tumor growth and spread. Research published in Cancer Epidemiology, Biomarkers, and Prevention in 2023 confirmed that obesity-associated inflammation significantly increases the risk of at least 13 different types of cancer. So here's the picture that is emerging from the research. Your gut microbiome sits at the center of a web of interconnected biological systems. It influences your immune function, your inflammation levels, your metabolic health, your hormonal balance, and your angiogenesis. When the microbiome is healthy, all of these systems tend to operate in a balanced, protective mode. When the microbiome is dysbiotic, these systems shift into a mode that promotes disease, including cancer. This is why I have spent 3 decades studying the foods that can protect and heal the gut microbiome. And what I want to share with you now is a framework based on the most robust scientific evidence for foods that have been shown to promote microbiome health and reduce cancer risk. The first category of foods I want you to focus on is fermented foods. And the research on this is genuinely remarkable. In a study published in Cell in August 2021, researchers at the Stanford Human Food Project conducted a randomized controlled trial, the gold standard of clinical research, with 36 healthy adults. Participants were assigned to a high-fiber diet or a high-fermented food diet for 17 weeks, and what they found was extraordinary. The fermented food group showed a dramatic increase in microbiome diversity, a significant reduction in markers of systemic inflammation, and changes in the composition of their gut bacteria that are associated with lower cancer risk. The fiber group showed some improvement as well, but the fermented food group showed more rapid and more pronounced changes. What was particularly striking was that the reduction in inflammatory markers in the fermented food group was directly correlated with the increase in microbiome diversity. The more diverse their microbiome became, the lower their inflammation markers dropped. This is a direct measurable link between gut bacteria and systemic health. Now, what are the fermented foods you should be eating? The research points to several categories. First, yogurt and kefir. Both contain live cultures of beneficial bacteria, particularly strains of Lactobacillus and Bifidobacterium. Multiple studies have shown that regular consumption of yogurt is associated with reduced risk of colorectal cancer and breast cancer. A 2020 meta-analysis published in the International Journal of Cancer analyzed data from over 3 million participants and found that regular yogurt consumption was associated with a 15% reduction in colorectal cancer risk. The mechanism involves the probiotic bacteria in yogurt, which produce conjugated linoleic acid, a compound that has been shown in laboratory studies to suppress tumor growth and induce apoptosis in cancer cells. When choosing yogurt, I recommend choosing plain, unsweetened varieties with live active cultures. Greek yogurt is an excellent choice because it also provides a concentrated source of protein. Sauerkraut and kimchi are equally powerful. Both are fermented cabbage products, and they contain a wide variety of probiotic bacterial strains, along with bioactive compounds like glucosinolates that have been shown to have anti-cancer properties. A 2022 study published in the Journal of Nutritional Biochemistry showed that compounds in kimchi suppress the growth of colorectal cancer cells in vitro and enhance the effectiveness of chemotherapy agents. Importantly, you want to choose unpasteurized sauerkraut and kimchi because pasteurization kills the live bacteria that provide the probiotic benefits. Miso and tempeh are fermented soy products that offer both probiotic benefits and powerful bioactive compounds. Miso, which is used in traditional Japanese cuisine, contains compounds that have been shown in research published in the Journal of Cancer Prevention to suppress angiogenesis and reduce cancer cell proliferation. Tempeh, which is made from fermented soybeans, is rich in beta-glucans, compounds that have been extensively studied for their immune-modulating and anti-tumor properties. The second category of foods that research shows is powerfully protective for the gut microbiome is polyphenol-rich plant foods. Polyphenols are bioactive compounds found in plant foods that have been shown to act as prebiotics, meaning they selectively feed beneficial gut bacteria and promote their growth and activity. The relationship between polyphenols and the gut microbiome is symbiotic. Your gut bacteria metabolize polyphenols into compounds that are even more bioactive than the original compounds, and in turn, polyphenols create an environment in your gut that favors beneficial bacteria. Blueberries are one of the most potent prebiotic foods available. They are rich in anthocyanins, which are polyphenols that give blueberries their deep purple-blue color. Research published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry in 2023 showed that regular blueberry consumption increased levels of bifidobacterium and lactobacillus in the gut and reduced markers of intestinal inflammation. A 2021 study at the University of Georgia found that volunteers who consumed 2 cups of blueberries daily for 6 weeks showed significant improvements in gut barrier integrity and a reduction in systemic inflammation. I recommend eating blueberries fresh or frozen. Both retain their bioactive compounds effectively. Green tea is another powerhouse. It contains compounds called catechins, the most potent of which is EGCG, or epigallocatechin gallate. EGCG has been studied extensively for its anti-cancer properties, and research published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2022 showed that regular green tea consumption was associated with a 30% reduction in breast cancer risk among women who consumed 3 or more cups daily. The mechanism is multifaceted. EGCG directly inhibits cancer cell growth, suppresses angiogenesis, and modulates the gut microbiome by promoting the growth of beneficial bacteria while suppressing harmful ones. I recommend choosing green tea varieties like sencha or matcha, which contain higher concentrations of catechins than blended varieties. For maximum benefit, steep green tea at 175 to 185 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 to 3 minutes. Water that is too hot can degrade some of the sensitive catechins. Extra virgin olive oil is one of the most extensively studied foods in cancer prevention research. It contains a compound called oleocanthal, which has been shown to have powerful anti-inflammatory properties. Research from the University of Louisiana and the University of Barcelona has demonstrated that oleocanthal induces apoptosis in cancer cells within 30 minutes of exposure, without harming healthy cells. Additionally, the polyphenols in olive oil act as prebiotics, promoting the growth of beneficial gut bacteria. The landmark PREDIM trial, which was published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2013 and followed over 7,000 participants, found that a Mediterranean diet supplemented with extra virgin olive oil reduced the risk of breast cancer by 68% compared to a control diet. I recommend using extra virgin olive oil as your primary cooking oil and consuming 1 to 2 tablespoons daily. Cruciferous vegetables are absolutely essential for gut microbiome health and cancer prevention. This category includes broccoli, bok choy, Brussels sprouts, kale, cauliflower, and watercress. These vegetables contain compounds called glucosinolates, which your gut bacteria convert into isothiocyanates, most notably sulforaphane. Sulforaphane is one of the most researched anti-cancer compounds in the botanical world. It activates a master regulatory protein in your cells called NRF2, which turns on a suite of protective genes involved in detoxification, antioxidant production, and cellular defense. Research at Johns Hopkins has shown that sulforaphane can inhibit the growth of breast cancer, prostate cancer, and colorectal cancer cells in laboratory studies. A 2022 study published in the Journal of Nutritional Biochemistry showed that sulforaphane also promotes the growth of beneficial gut bacteria and reduces markers of intestinal inflammation. To maximize the sulforaphane content in cruciferous vegetables, I recommend light steaming for 3 to 4 minutes. Overcooking destroys the myrosinase enzyme that is needed to convert glucosinolates into sulforaphane. For maximum benefit, you can also eat these vegetables raw or chop them and let them sit for 10 to 15 minutes before cooking, which allows the myrosinase enzyme to become active. Tomatoes, particularly when cooked, are another food I want you to prioritize. Cooked tomato products like tomato sauce, tomato paste, and sun-dried tomatoes are exceptionally rich in lycopene, one of the most powerful antioxidants in the plant kingdom. Lycopene is a carotenoid pigment that gives tomatoes their red color, and research published in the International Journal of Cancer in 2023 demonstrated that men who consumed tomato products more than 5 times per week had a 35% lower risk of prostate cancer compared to those who consumed them less than once per week. The reason I emphasize cooked tomatoes is that lycopene becomes more bioavailable when tomatoes are heated. The cooking process breaks down the cell walls and releases lycopene from the matrix of the tomato, making it easier for your body to absorb. A study published in the British Journal of Nutrition showed that lycopene absorption from cooked tomato paste was more than twice as high as from raw tomatoes. Garlic and onions belong in this conversation as well. They contain sulfur compounds, particularly allicin and diallyl disulfide, which have been shown in research published in Cancer Prevention Research to suppress the growth of cancer cells, reduce inflammation, and promote the activity of natural killer cells, your body's cancer-fighting immune cells. Garlic also acts as a prebiotic, feeding beneficial gut bacteria. Research at the University of North Carolina found that people who consumed garlic regularly had significantly higher populations of beneficial bacteria in their gut and lower levels of inflammatory markers. Mushrooms are another food category that research is increasingly pointing to as powerfully protective. Edible mushrooms contain beta-glucans, which are polysaccharides that have been shown to enhance immune function and exhibit anti-tumor activity. Research at City of Hope Cancer Center in California has demonstrated that compounds in mushrooms can inhibit angiogenesis and enhance the activity of T cells and natural killer cells. The range of beneficial mushrooms is broad. Shiitake, maitake, oyster, and cremini mushrooms all have research backing their health benefits. I recommend incorporating mushrooms into your diet several times per week. Fatty fish like salmon, sardines, and mackerel provide omega-3 fatty acids, particularly EPA and DHA, which have potent anti-inflammatory properties and have been shown in a meta-analysis published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition to reduce the risk of colorectal cancer by 20%. The anti-inflammatory mechanism is crucial here. Chronic inflammation is a known driver of cancer development and progression, and omega-3 fatty acids directly reduce the production of inflammatory cytokines and promote the resolution of inflammation. I recommend consuming fatty fish 2 to 3 times per week for optimal benefit. Dark chocolate, with a cacao content of 70% or higher, is a prebiotic food that many people do not expect to see on this list. But the research is compelling. Cocoa contains flavonoids called flavonols, which have been shown in studies published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition to increase the population of beneficial bacteria in the gut, particularly Bifidobacterium and Lactobacillus species, while reducing the population of harmful bacteria. A 2023 study at the University of L'Aquila in Italy found that participants who consumed dark chocolate daily for 4 weeks showed significant improvements in gut microbiome diversity and reductions in inflammatory markers. The key is to choose chocolate with minimal added sugar and a high cacao content. Now, I promised you at the beginning of this video that I would share a research breakthrough that might surprise you. Here it is. In 2024, researchers at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden published a study in Nature Medicine that identified a specific bacterial strain that appears to play a pivotal role in cancer prevention. The strain is called Faecalibacterium prausnitzii, and what they found was remarkable. Individuals with higher levels of Faecalibacterium prausnitzii in their gut had a 45% lower risk of colorectal cancer compared to those with lower levels. And here is what is particularly exciting. The researchers found that this beneficial bacterium produces a metabolite that directly activates tumor-suppressing pathways in the colon. They also found that this bacterial strain is highly responsive to dietary interventions. People who increased their consumption of fermented foods, polyphenols, and dietary fiber showed significant increases in Faecalibacterium prausnitzii levels within just 8 weeks. This is extraordinary. It means that you have the ability, through what you eat, to cultivate a gut environment that actively protects you against cancer. And the food that was most strongly associated with increases in Faecalibacterium prausnitzii in the Swedish study was plain, unsweetened yogurt. Just plain yogurt. One of the most ordinary foods on your grocery store shelf turns out to be one of the most powerful cancer-protective foods you can eat. What I find most extraordinary about this research is what it tells us about the relationship between diet and disease. We tend to think of cancer as something that happens to us, something random and unpredictable, but the research is revealing a different picture. The choices you make every day, 3 times a day, every single day of your life, are shaping your biology at the most fundamental level. The food on your plate is either feeding your health defense systems or undermining them. Your gut microbiome is either a protective ally or a silent contributor to disease. And the beautiful part is that this is not fixed. Your microbiome is malleable. It changes in response to what you eat, sometimes within days. This is one of the most hopeful and empowering findings in modern medicine. If this information resonated with you, please share it with someone you care about. The science of food as medicine is one of the most important conversations of our time, and most people have never been exposed to this research. You now have knowledge that can genuinely change someone's life. If you want to go deeper on this topic, I have another video where I break down the 5 health defense systems and explain exactly how specific foods activate each one. I think you will find it just as fascinating. I'm Dr. William Lee. Remember that your body has an extraordinary, remarkable, almost unbelievable capacity to heal itself when you give it the right tools. The science is clear, the evidence is overwhelming, and you have more power over your own health than you have ever been told. I'll see you in the next video.